The stranger in the back pew stood the moment Hannah Shaw's trembling fingers unfolded the note, and his voice carried through the cathedral like a blade cutting silk. "She belongs with me now." 300 guests froze mid-gasp. Hannah's vision blurred at the edges, the words on the cream-colored paper swimming before her eyes. "I can't do this. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." Trevor's handwriting, unmistakable and devastating. The chair beside her on the altar platform sat empty, mocking her with its white satin bow and abandoned boutonniere. She looked up. The man who had spoken was already moving down the aisle, tall and otherworldly in a charcoal suit that looked tailored by hands that understood angles and shadows. His hair fell past his shoulders in white silver waves that caught the stained glass light, and his skin was pale as winter moonlight. He moved like water, like smoke, like nothing human should move. Hannah's mother gasped from the front row. Her father half rose from his seat, confusion and anger warring on his face. The guests murmured, a rising tide of shock and speculation. The stranger reached the altar steps and extended one hand toward her. His eyes were dark, so dark they seemed to hold no color at all, only depth. "Walk with me," he said quietly, "or stay and let them witness your humiliation. The choice is yours." She should have been afraid, should have demanded answers, should have fled, should have done anything except take his hand. But Hannah Shaw had spent 26 years being appropriate, being careful, being the good daughter who made sensible choices. She had chosen Trevor because he was safe, because he fit into the life her parents wanted, because marrying him seemed like the next logical step. And he had left her standing at the altar in a $5,000 dress with 300 people watching her heart break. So she placed her hand in the stranger's palm and felt his cool fingers close around hers. The murmurs exploded into outright chaos. Hannah's mother cried out her name. The priest stammered something about propriety and sense and waiting just a moment. But the stranger turned, keeping Hannah's hand locked in his, and walked back down that endless aisle with her beside him. She kept her chin up, kept her eyes forward, let her train whisper along the carpet behind her, like a ghost of what should have been. The cathedral doors swung open before them without touch. Outside, a black car idled at the curb, sleek and expensive and utterly out of place among the decorated sedan chairs her wedding party had rented. The stranger handed her into the back seat with old-world courtesy, then slid in beside her. The car pulled away before she could think to protest. Hannah finally found her voice. "Who are you?" "My name is Nicolae Octavian," he said, settling back against the leather seat. His accent was faint, unplaceable, the kind that came from speaking too many languages across too many centuries. "And before you ask your next question, yes, I am a vampire. No, I will not harm you. And yes, I knew your groom would not appear." The world tilted sideways. Hannah pressed one hand against the cool window glass, grounding herself in something solid. "That's not possible." "You have been raised in the human world," Nicolae said. It was not a question. "Sheltered from the truth that exists in the shadows of your cities. But I assure you, we are very real." "Vampires," Hannah repeated flatly. Her mind scrambled for purchase, for logic, for anything that made sense. The man beside her looked like something out of a pre-Raphaelite painting, beautiful and terrible and completely impossible. "Trevor left me for vampires." "Trevor left you because of vampires," Nicolae corrected. "There is a difference." The car turned onto a street Hannah did not recognize. The driver, she noticed for the first time, had the same pale skin and white hair as Nicolae, the same unsettling grace. "I want to go home," she said. "Where is home?" Nicolae asked. "The apartment you shared with Trevor Morrison? I would not recommend it. His creditors are already there, searching for anything of value." Hannah's stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" Nicolae studied her for a long moment, and something almost like pity crossed his elegant features. "Your former fiancé borrowed a substantial sum from a vampire loan house 6 months ago. The Sanguine Collective, they call themselves. I call them vultures who prey on desperate humans, and turn their debts into chains. Trevor wouldn't, Hannah said, but her voice wavered. He had a good job. His family has money. Had money, Nicolae said. Past tense. His father's company collapsed last winter. Trevor attempted to rebuild it with borrowed funds. When he could not repay the collective, they offered him an alternative. Bring them something they wanted more than money. Me? The word came out as barely a whisper. Not you specifically. Me. Nicolae's smile was thin and sharp. Your wedding was advertised in the society pages, a large public event, well attended, cameras everywhere. Trevor was instructed to ensure I received an invitation. When I did not respond, they gave him new orders: abandon you at the altar, create a spectacle. They knew I would be watching. Hannah's hands fisted in the silk of her wedding dress. Why would they think you cared about a random human wedding? Because I make it my business to interfere with theirs, Nicolae said simply. The collective operates in this city with my permission, which I have been preparing to revoke. They needed leverage, a public humiliation of a human bride, a viral scandal, media attention on the family. They intended to approach you afterward in your vulnerability, offer comfort, bind you with debts of gratitude, and then use you as collateral to draw me into negotiations. The car turned again, and through the window Hannah saw familiar streets falling away, replaced by the industrial district's warehouses and converted lofts. How do you know all this? I am the vampire king of the Eastern Territories, Nicolae said. It is my responsibility to know. Hannah laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. This is insane. This morning I was getting married. Now I'm in a car with someone claiming to be vampire royalty, and apparently my fiancé was in debt to loan sharks. And none of this makes any sense. I understand your distress, Nicolae said. Do you? Hannah turned to face him fully. Do you really? Because you walked into my wedding like you owned the place, announced that I belonged to you in front of everyone I know, and kidnapped me. I gave you a shield, Nicolae corrected, and for the first time she heard steel beneath the courtesy. I gave you a way to walk out of that cathedral with dignity instead of pity. The story will spread, yes, but it will not be about the poor bride abandoned by her groom. It will be about the mysterious stranger who claimed you. Romantic, dramatic, much better for your pride. I didn't ask for your help. No, Nicolae agreed. You did not, but I gave it nonetheless, because Trevor Morrison deserved to lose you, and the collective deserved to see their trap spring backward. The car pulled through an iron gate into a private courtyard. Beyond, a building rose 6 stories, all glass and steel and sharp modern edges. But the stonework around the entrance was old, genuine Gothic revival, gargoyles and pointed arches imported from another century. Nicolae stepped out and offered his hand again. Hannah ignored it and climbed out on her own, her train catching on the car door. She yanked it free with more force than necessary. Where are we? One of my residences, Nicolae said. You will be safe here while we determine our next move. Our next move, Hannah repeated. There is no our. I don't know you. I don't trust you. And I certainly don't belong to you, no matter what you announce to 300 witnesses. Nicolae's expression did not change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. You are correct. You belong to yourself. My words were theater, nothing more. But the collective will not see it that way, and neither will Trevor Morrison's creditors. As of this moment, you are caught in a web you did not spin, and your choices are limited. Hannah's jaw set. Then give me choices, real ones. Come inside, Nicolae said. We will speak properly. I will explain what you face, and you will decide your own path. I am not your captor, Miss Shaw. Consider me an advisor with a vested interest in your welfare. She wanted to argue, wanted to demand he take her home, to her parents, to anywhere that made sense. But home was the apartment she had shared with Trevor, and her parents were probably still at the cathedral dealing with 300 confused guests, and nowhere in her carefully planned life had prepared her for this moment. So she followed Nicolae Octavian through the Gothic entrance and into the building beyond. The interior struck her immediately. Modern minimalism blended seamlessly with antique grandeur. A lobby of polished marble gave way to an elevator with brass fittings that looked centuries old. Nicolae pressed the button for the top floor. "How many vampires live here?" Hannah asked as the elevator climbed. "In this building? 17, including myself. In this city? Several hundred. In the world?" Nicolae tilted his head. "We do not take censuses, but we are not as rare as your stories would have you believe." The elevator opened directly into a penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the furnishings managed to be both sparse and luxurious. Dark leather, polished wood, and everywhere the gleam of silver that vampires supposedly feared. "Silver does not harm us," Nicolae said, tracking her gaze. "That is a myth. Sunlight, however, is quite real. You burn in sunlight. We weaken, burn eventually with prolonged exposure, but a few moments will not kill us. We are not as fragile as your folklore suggests." He gestured to a seating area near the windows. "Please, sit. I imagine you would like to remove your shoes at the very least." Hannah glanced down at the white heels that had already rubbed blisters on her heels during the pre-wedding photos. She kicked them off and sank onto the leather couch, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the cathedral and the car ride drained away, leaving only the crushing weight of the day's events. Nicolae disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a glass of water and a small plate of fruit and cheese. "You should eat. Shock is easier to process on a stable blood sugar." "Do you eat?" The question slipped out before Hannah could stop it. "Occasionally. For pleasure, not sustenance. We require blood to survive, but we are not mindless about it. Most vampires in the modern world maintain arrangements with willing donors or purchase from blood banks." He settled into a chair across from her, crossing one ankle over his knee in a posture that managed to be both relaxed and somehow regal. "I will not drink from you without your permission. I have no need to take unwillingly." Hannah picked up a piece of cheese without really seeing it. "Tell me everything. The collective, Trevor's debt, why you care. All of it." So Nicolae told her. The Sanguine Collective had operated in the city for 30 years, preying on humans who fell into desperate circumstances. They loaned money at impossible interest rates, then used the resulting debt to bind humans into service. Blackmail, coercion, worse. Some humans vanished entirely, inducted into the vampire world as thralls, blood servants stripped of autonomy. Nicolae had been king of the Eastern Territories for 2 centuries. His rule was built on codes older than modern law, vampire traditions that balanced power with responsibility. He allowed other vampires to operate within his territory, but only if they followed his edicts. No killing without cause, no turning humans without consent, no exploitation of the vulnerable. The collective violated those edicts regularly, and Nicolae had been building a case to exile them entirely. But vampire politics were complex, ancient, bound by rules of evidence and challenge that made human courts look simple. "Trevor came to their attention last fall," Nicolae said. "They sensed his desperation and offered him capital. When he could not repay, they began extracting payment in other ways. Information, access, eventually you." "He proposed 6 months ago," Hannah said slowly. "Right when you said he took the loan." "Yes." The cheese turned to ash on her tongue. "Did he ever love me at all?" Nicolae's expression softened slightly. "I cannot answer that, but I can tell you that the collective instructed him to bind himself to you legally. They wanted the connection, the leverage. Whether his feelings were genuine beneath their manipulation, I do not know." Hannah set down the untouched water glass. Her hands were shaking. "And you crashed my wedding because you knew they would be watching." "I came to prevent them from approaching you in your moment of vulnerability," Nicolae said. "By claiming you publicly, I placed you under my protection. They cannot touch you now without declaring open war against me, which they are not prepared to do. So I traded one claim for another." "No." Nicolae leaned forward, and the intensity in his dark eyes pinned her in place. "I claimed you in theater only, a performance to shield you from genuine predators. You are free to walk away from me at any moment. But understand this, if you do, The collective will come for you. They will frame it as kindness, as help in your time of need. They are very good at identifying pain and exploiting it. Hannah stood abruptly, her wedding dress rustling around her. She walked to the windows and stared out at the city below. Somewhere down there, Trevor was running from his debts. Somewhere, the collective was plotting their next move. And here, in this impossible penthouse, a vampire king offered her protection she had never asked for. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. "Your cooperation," Nicolae said. "The collective attempted to use you as bait. I propose we turn their trap against them, give them what they want, let them think they have leverage, and when they move against me, we spring the real trap." Hannah turned. "You want to use me as bait." "I want to give you the choice to fight back," Nicolae corrected. "You were made a pawn in someone else's game. I am offering you the chance to become a player instead. And if I say no, then I will ensure your safety through other means, relocate you if necessary, provide resources to rebuild your life elsewhere. You will never see me again." He stood, moving to stand a careful distance away, giving her space. "But I think you do not want to run. I think you want to make them pay for what they tried to take from you." He was right. The realization settled over Hannah like a weight and a liberation at once. She did not want to hide, did not want to start over in some new city, forever looking over her shoulder. Trevor had humiliated her. The collective had tried to use her, and she was done being treated like a thing to be moved around someone else's chessboard. "What would I have to do?" she asked. Nicolae's smile was sharp and approving. "First, you must become visible. The collective believes you will retreat in shame. Instead, you will attend social events on my arm. Be seen. Let the story spread that you have chosen me over your former fiancé. They will approach you, I promise. When they do, you wear this." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a small silver pendant on a fine chain. "It will allow me to hear everything said in your presence. When they reveal their hand, I will have the evidence I need to bring before the Vampire Council and have them exiled permanently." Hannah took the pendant, turning it over in her palm. It was beautiful, an Art Nouveau design of intertwined vines. "And what happens to Trevor? That is for you to decide," Nicolae said. "I can bring him here, let you speak to him, let him explain himself if explanation is possible, or I can handle him as I would any human who aided the collective in their schemes." "Don't hurt him," Hannah said immediately, then stopped, surprised at her own response. After everything, some part of her still defaulted to protecting Trevor. The realization made her angry. "Actually, bring him here. I want to hear him say it to my face." Nicolae inclined his head. "It will be done. He is being monitored. I will have him brought here tomorrow evening." "Why evening?" "Because I am stronger at night, and I do not trust him not to attempt something foolish." Nicolae glanced toward the windows, where the afternoon sun still poured through. "You will stay here tonight. I will have one of my people bring you appropriate clothing. The guest room is through that door. You should rest." Hannah looked down at her wedding dress, suddenly desperate to be out of it. "Can you help me with the buttons? There are about 1,000,000 of them down the back." For the first time, Nicolae hesitated. "Are you certain?" "I can't reach them myself, and I am not sleeping in this thing." He moved behind her, and Hannah felt cool fingers brush the nape of her neck as he began working the tiny pearl buttons free. He worked in silence, methodical and careful, and Hannah found herself absurdly aware of his proximity. He smelled like cold air and something darker, earthier. Cedar, maybe. Old books. "Why did you really come to the wedding?" she asked quietly. "The real reason. You could have warned me beforehand, sent a message. You did not have to make a spectacle." The buttons continued opening, one by one. "Because the collective needed to see that I would go to any length to disrupt their plans," Nicolae said finally. "Because I needed them to believe you were valuable enough to me that they would focus their attention on you rather than the dozen other schemes I am simultaneously unraveling. And because..." He paused, and she felt rather than saw his hesitation. "Because no one should be left standing alone in front of 300 people. I have lived a very long time, and I still believe that cruelty without purpose is unacceptable. The last button came free, and Hannah felt the dress loosen around her ribs. She held it against her chest and turned slightly to look at him over her shoulder. "Thank you. For that, at least." Nicolae stepped back, giving her space. "The guest room has a private bathroom. You will find everything you need. I will be in my study if you require anything." He left, and Hannah was alone. She made her way to the guest room, stripped off the wedding dress, and stood under a scalding shower until her skin turned pink and the day's events felt slightly less surreal. When she emerged, wrapped in a plush robe she found hanging on the door, she discovered that someone had left clothes on the bed. Dark jeans, a soft sweater, undergarments still in packaging, all in her size. Hannah dressed, then climbed into the bed. She should not have been able to sleep, should have spent the night processing everything Nicolae had told her, everything that had shattered her carefully constructed life. But exhaustion pulled her under, and she slept without dreaming. She woke to darkness beyond the windows and the smell of coffee. Hannah followed the scent into the main living area and found Nicolae standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. He turned as she entered. "There is coffee in the kitchen, and food if you are hungry." Hannah poured herself a mug and returned to the living room. "What time is it?" "Just past 9 in the evening. You slept for several hours." Nicolae gestured to the couch. "We should discuss what comes next." They talked for hours. Nicolae explained vampire society in careful detail, the hierarchies and territories, the councils and courts. He described the collective's operations, the humans they had ensnared, the evidence he had already gathered. And he outlined his plan, the careful choreography that would require Hannah to be seen, to be vulnerable, to trust him. "They will approach you at the Thornfield Gallery opening in 3 days," Nicolae said. "It is the kind of event I attend regularly, and they will expect you to accompany me. One of their senior members, a vampire named Christiana, will engage you when I am occupied with other guests. She will express sympathy for your situation, offer understanding, plant the seeds of doubt about whether I can truly be trusted." "And I play along," Hannah said. "You express uncertainty, confusion. You do not commit to anything, but you do not refuse her friendship. She will arrange a second meeting somewhere private. That is when we will have them." "How do you know she will not just kill me?" "Because I will be listening," Nicolae said, touching the pendant that Hannah had left on the guest room dresser. "And because they still believe you have value as leverage. They will not waste that by acting rashly." Hannah swirled the last of her coffee, watching the dark liquid catch the light. "And afterward, when this is done?" "Afterward you are free," Nicolae said simply. "Free of Trevor, free of the collective, free of me if you choose. Your life returns to your own hands." She wanted to ask what would happen if she did not choose to be free of him. Wanted to examine the strange pull she felt toward this ancient, dangerous creature who had walked into her ruined wedding and offered her a way out. But it was too soon, too complicated, too impossible. The intercom buzzed. Nicolae rose and pressed a button on the wall panel. "Yes?" "We have Trevor Morrison, my lord," said a voice. "As requested." Nicolae looked at Hannah. "Are you ready for this?" She set down her coffee mug and stood. "Yes." Nicolae gave instructions, and a moment later the elevator doors opened. 2 vampires escorted Trevor into the penthouse. He looked terrible, disheveled and hollow-eyed, his shirt wrinkled and his hands shaking. His gaze locked on Hannah, and something like relief flooded his features. "Hannah, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. I need to explain." "Sit," Nicolae said quietly, but the command in his voice was absolute. Trevor sat, and the 2 vampires positioned themselves behind him. Nicolae settled into his chair, and Hannah remained standing, arms crossed. "Explain," she said. Trevor's words tumbled out in a desperate rush. Everything Nicolae had already told her, but from Trevor's perspective. The company collapse, the failed attempts to save it, the collective's offer that had seemed like salvation. He swore he had not known what they really wanted at first, swore he had tried to protect her. "I panicked," Trevor said, his voice cracking. "This morning I realized I could not go through with it, could not bind you legally to me when I knew what they would do. So I ran. I thought if I disappeared they would lose interest in you. That was foolish, Nicolae said. They would simply have approached her directly, framed themselves as allies helping her find her missing groom. Trevor flinched. I know that now. But I could not stand there and marry her knowing I was handing her over to them. Hannah stared at the man she had planned to build a life with, searched his face for the person she had thought she loved. Did you ever actually care about me? Or was I always just part of the deal? I cared, Trevor said desperately. Hannah, I loved you. I still do. That's why I could not. You loved me so much you left me standing at the altar, Hannah cut him off. You loved me so much you used me as collateral without telling me. You loved me so much you ran away instead of trusting me with the truth. I was trying to protect you. You were protecting yourself, Hannah said, and the clarity of it settled through her like ice. If you had really loved me, you would have come to me 6 months ago, told me everything, let me choose whether to stand with you or walk away. Instead, you made me a pawn, and when that got too uncomfortable, you abandoned me to deal with the consequences alone. Trevor opened his mouth, closed it again. His shoulders sagged. You are pathetic, Nicolae said, almost conversationally. You involved this woman in schemes she had no knowledge of, then demonstrated that you value your own comfort over her safety or dignity. I have seen many things in 200 years, Trevor Morrison, but cowardice dressed as protection never ceases to disgust me. What are you going to do to me? Trevor asked, and his voice shook. Nicolae looked at Hannah. That is not my decision to make. Hannah took a slow breath. I want him to testify against the collective. Everything he knows, everything they made him do, all of it recorded and witnessed. And then, I want him gone. Not dead, she added, seeing Nicolae's slight smile. Just gone. Out of my life, out of this city, wherever he needs to be to start over without dragging anyone else down with him. The collective will not be pleased with his betrayal, Nicolae said. Then I suggest he move far away and stay quiet, Hannah said coldly. He made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. Trevor stared at her like he had never seen her before. Hannah. We're done, Trevor. Sign whatever papers need signing to make the annulment final. Give your testimony, and then go. She turned to Nicolae. Can that be arranged? Of course. Nicolae gestured to the 2 vampires behind Trevor. Take him to the lower study, record his statement. When we are finished with him, ensure he understands the consequences of returning to this territory. They hauled Trevor to his feet. He looked back at Hannah one last time, something pleading in his expression, but she had nothing left to give him. The elevator doors closed on his face, and he was gone. Hannah sank onto the couch, suddenly drained. Nicolae moved to the bar and poured 2 glasses of dark liquid. He offered her one. What is it? Whiskey, very old. I find it helps sometimes when the weight of decisions becomes heavy. She took it and drank, the burn steadying her. I thought I would feel worse, about ending things so finally. You feel relief, Nicolae said, settling beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. You finally have closure on what was already dead. There is no shame in that. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking whiskey and watching the city lights. After a while, Hannah said, Tell me about you. Not the vampire king, not the politics and territories. You. How does someone become what you are? Nicolae considered for a moment. I was born in the Carpathian Mountains in 1803, the son of a minor nobleman who lost everything in the Napoleonic Wars. When I was 23, I was conscripted into an army I did not believe in to fight a war I did not understand. I was dying in a field hospital when she found me. She? My maker, an ancient vampire named Ekaterina. She turned only those who showed promise, who had the strength to survive the transformation. She offered me a choice, die as a human or live as something else. I chose life. His voice was distant, remembering. She taught me everything. Vampire law, combat, politics, how to move through the centuries without losing yourself to the hunger or the isolation. When she finally met the sun by choice 3 decades ago, she left me her territories and her responsibilities. Met the sun by choice, Hannah repeated. Suicide? We call it the final dawn, when a vampire has lived long enough, seen enough, and chooses to end their existence on their own terms. Ekaterina was nearly 800 years old. She said she was tired. Nicolae's expression was unreadable. I understood, even as I mourned her. Do you ever think about it? The final dawn? Sometimes, Nicolae admitted, but not often. There is still work to be done, still injustice to fight, still beauty to witness. As long as those things remain, I remain. Hannah studied his profile, the sharp lines and ageless features. Do you get lonely? He turned to look at her, and something vulnerable flickered across his face. Yes. Immortality is a long time to spend alone, even surrounded by others of your kind. We do not form bonds easily. Trust is complicated when everyone you care about will eventually leave. Is that why you have not? Hannah stopped, unsure how to finish the question. Why I have no queen, Nicolae supplied. Why I rule alone. Yes, I have had lovers across the centuries, but nothing that lasted. Vampires pair rarely, and when we do, it is usually with other vampires. Humans age and die too quickly. The pain of watching them fade is difficult. But you are helping me, Hannah said, protecting me. Why risk that pain? Nicolae held her gaze. Because some things are worth the risk, and because you looked at me in that cathedral, humiliated and hurting, and still found the strength to take my hand and walk out with your head high. That kind of courage is rare, Hannah Shaw. It deserves to be protected. Her breath caught. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Hannah could not quite name. She wanted to lean closer, wanted to ask questions she was not ready to hear the answers to. Instead, she finished her whiskey and stood. I should sleep. Tomorrow is going to be complicated. Nicolae rose as well, ever courteous. Indeed, the gallery opening is the day after tomorrow. We will need to prepare you. Prepare me how? Wardrobe, for one. You will need something that makes a statement, and we should discuss how to carry yourself, how to respond to questions. The city's social elite will be watching, and your performance must be convincing. Hannah nodded. Okay, we'll start tomorrow. She went to bed but did not sleep for a long time. Instead, she lay in the darkness and thought about impossible things. Vampires, debts, ancient creatures who walked through centuries and still felt loneliness, and the strange growing warmth she felt when Nicolae looked at her like she mattered. The next day passed in a blur of preparation. A vampire named Serafina arrived with an entire wardrobe of elegant clothing, spending hours discussing styles and colors and what statement each outfit would make. Hannah tried on dress after dress until they settled on a deep burgundy gown that managed to be both sophisticated and daring, with a neckline that drew the eye and fabric that moved like water. Nicolae watched from his position by the windows, offering occasional commentary. Too sweet, he said of one pale pink option. She is not trying to blend in. And then, when Hannah emerged in the burgundy, yes, perfect. You look like someone worth fighting for. The words settled into Hannah's chest and stayed there, warm and dangerous. They practiced conversation, Nicolae playing various members of the vampire elite who would attend the gallery. He taught her the subtle hierarchies, which vampires to defer to and which ones she could safely dismiss. Taught her how to deflect invasive questions with grace and how to signal him if she felt threatened. The pendant will allow me to hear you, but not to speak back, he explained, fastening it around her neck. His fingers brushed her throat, and Hannah shivered. If you need me immediately, say my full name 3 times in your mind. I will feel it and come to you. Nicolae Octavian, Hannah said aloud, testing it. That's very formal. I am a very formal vampire, he said, but there was warmth in his voice. You may call me Nick if you prefer. My friends do. Are we friends? He stepped back, studying her. I think we might be becoming something more complicated than friends, Hannah Shaw. But we will define it on our own terms, in our own time. The night of the gallery opening, Hannah stood in front of the mirror in her burgundy dress and barely recognized herself. She looked powerful, polished, like someone who belonged in Nicolae's world. The pendant hung against her collarbone, silver and secret. Nicolae appeared behind her in the mirror, devastating in a black suit with subtle embroidery at the cuffs. His white hair was pulled back, revealing the stark elegance of his features. "Ready?" he asked. Hannah turned to face him. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." His smile was approving. "That is the spirit." The gallery was already crowded when they arrived, a glittering display of wealth and art and carefully cultivated mystery. Humans and vampires mingled in a dance of awareness and pretense, everyone knowing what everyone else was, no one acknowledging it directly. Nicolae placed a hand at the small of Hannah's back and guided her through the crowd. Heads turned, whispers followed. She kept her chin up and her expression serene, exactly as they had practiced. They viewed the art, Nicolae offering commentary on pieces and artists with the easy knowledge of someone who had watched centuries of artistic movements rise and fall. Hannah found herself genuinely interested, drawn into his descriptions. "You have a good eye," Nicolae said as she paused before a particularly striking abstract piece. "This artist will be famous in a decade. Invest now if you wish." "I'm unemployed and homeless," Hannah reminded him wryly. "I'm not really in the market for investment art." "Unemployed?" Nicolae tilted his head. "What did you do before?" "I was a graphic designer at a marketing firm. Was because I'm pretty sure they're not going to hold my position after I missed a week of work to deal with my imploded wedding and subsequent kidnapping by vampires." "You should freelance," Nicolae said. "Your own clients, your own terms. I could provide introductions if you wish. Several vampires in my territory run businesses that require branding and design work." Hannah blinked. "You're offering me job connections?" "I am offering you options. What you do with them is your choice." He glanced across the room and his expression shifted slightly. "She is here. Christiana, 3:00, speaking with the gallery owner." Hannah followed his gaze and found the vampire immediately. Christiana looked like a porcelain doll, delicate and beautiful, with white blonde hair and pale blue eyes that seemed almost translucent. She wore ivory, which should have washed her out, but instead made her look like she was carved from marble. "She will approach soon," Nicolae murmured. "I will make myself available to the council representative who just arrived. That is your opening. Remember, uncertain but not hostile, confused but not closed. Give her nothing concrete, but do not reject her overtures." "Got it," Hannah said, her heart rate picking up. Nicolae squeezed her hand once, briefly, then moved away to engage an elderly vampire in elaborate robes. Hannah continued through the gallery alone, hyper-aware of Christiana's attention, tracking her. It took less than 10 minutes. "You must be the famous Hannah Shaw," Christiana said, appearing at Hannah's elbow with a glass of champagne in each hand. She offered one to Hannah with a smile that looked genuine. "I'm Christiana. I've been hearing such fascinating things about you." Hannah accepted the champagne, but did not drink. "I'm sure you have. My wedding went viral, apparently. Or my non-wedding, I suppose." "Terribly dramatic," Christiana agreed sympathetically. "And then to be swept away by Nicolae Octavian himself. That must have been quite overwhelming." "That's one word for it," Hannah said carefully. "I'm still processing, to be honest." "Of course you are. It's all so sudden." Christiana touched Hannah's arm lightly. "I hope you don't mind me saying, but you seem a bit out of your depth. Nicolae is lovely, of course, but he does have a tendency to act without considering how his decisions affect others." Hannah let uncertainty show on her face. "You know him well?" "We've moved in the same circles for decades. He's powerful, protective, very principled, but also very focused on his own agenda. I would hate to see you become collateral damage in one of his political maneuvers." The words were delivered with perfect concern, but Hannah could feel the manipulation beneath them, the careful planting of doubt. "I don't really understand vampire politics." "No, why would you? You're human. You were living your life, and suddenly you're thrust into a world you never asked to be part of. That must be so difficult." Christiana's sympathy was masterful. "If you ever need someone to talk to, someone who can explain things from a more neutral perspective, I would be happy to help. No obligation, no agenda. Just friendship, if you want it." Hannah bit her lip, projecting exactly the kind of vulnerable uncertainty Christiana wanted to see. "That's kind of you. I don't really know who to trust right now." "Understandable. But you don't have to decide tonight." Christiana withdrew a card from her small purse and pressed it into Hannah's hand. "My number. Call me if you need anything, even if it's just to talk." "Thank you," Hannah said, and meant it to sound grateful and confused. Christiana smiled, squeezed her arm once more, and drifted away. Hannah slipped the card into her clutch and exhaled slowly. Nicolae appeared at her side moments later, his hand finding the small of her back again. "Well done," he murmured. "She believes she has found an opening." "She's very good at this," Hannah said quietly. "If I didn't know what she was doing, I would have believed every word. That is why she is dangerous. Come, we should make an appearance at a few more conversations, then leave. We do not want to seem too eager." They circulated for another hour, and Hannah found herself relaxing into the role. She was good at this, she realized. Good at reading social cues, at playing the part, at being exactly what people expected while revealing nothing true. Years of navigating her parents' expectations and Trevor's social circles had trained her well. When they finally returned to Nicolae's penthouse, Hannah kicked off her heels with relief and collapsed on the couch. "How did I do?" "Really?" Nicolae poured them both whiskey and settled beside her, closer than he had sat before. "You were perfect. Christiana will report back to the collective that you are vulnerable and potentially exploitable. They will arrange a second meeting, somewhere private where they believe I cannot listen. And that is when we will have them." Hannah sipped her whiskey. "What happens to her? After?" "Exile, most likely. The council takes a dim view of vampires who prey on humans without consent. She will be stripped of her territory and resources and sent to a region far from here with strict oversight." He paused. "Does that trouble you?" "No," Hannah said honestly. "She tried to use me. She's still trying to use me. I don't feel guilty about stopping her." Nicolae's expression warmed. "You are stronger than you realize." Hannah Shaw. "Most humans would be paralyzed by fear at this point. Instead, you are thinking strategically, acting decisively. It is impressive." "I had a good teacher," Hannah said, meeting his dark eyes. "And good motivation. I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter, like I'm just a piece to be moved around. I matter. My choices matter. And I'm done letting other people write my story." "Yes," Nicolae said softly. "You are." He reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his cool fingers lingering against her cheek. "I am beginning to think fate did me a favor, sending me to that cathedral." Hannah's breath caught. "Nicolae." "I know," he said. "It is too soon, too complicated. You are still recovering from Trevor's betrayal, and I am an ancient creature who should know better than to develop feelings for someone whose heartbeat I can hear from across the room." His hand dropped away. "But I want you to know that when this is over, when you are safe and free, I would very much like to spend more time with you, learn what you want from life, see if we could build something real without debt or danger or manipulation hanging over us." "I would like that too," Hannah whispered. Nicolae smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him look younger, more human. "Then we have something to look forward to, but first, we finish this." 3 days later, Christiana called. Hannah was in Nicolae's penthouse, working on a design project for one of the clients Nicolae had introduced her to, when her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. She glanced at Nicolae, who nodded. She answered. "Hello?" "Hannah, it's Christiana. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "No, just working. What's up?" "I was wondering if you might want to have coffee, just the two of us, somewhere quiet where we can talk properly. I know you must have so many questions, and I thought having a calm conversation might help." Christiana's voice was warm, friendly. "No pressure at all, of course, but the offer stands if you're interested." Hannah hesitated exactly the right amount of time. "I don't know if I should. Nicolae has been very protective, and I don't want to upset him." "You're not his prisoner, Hannah. You're entitled to have friends, to make your own choices. That's exactly what I mean about him being controlling." A slight edge crept into Christiana's voice, quickly smoothed over. But truly, no pressure. I just thought you might appreciate having someone to talk to who isn't quite so invested in keeping you isolated. You're right, Hannah said, letting relief color her tone. I would like that. When were you thinking? Tomorrow afternoon? There's a cafe near the waterfront, very public, very safe. The Blue Pearl. Do you know it? I can find it. Wonderful. Say 2 o'clock? I'll see you then. Christiana hung up, and Hannah lowered the phone. Nicolae had moved to stand beside her, his expression focused. The Blue Pearl, Hannah said. Tomorrow at 2. Perfect. It is exactly what we expected. She wants you to feel like you are making independent choices while she gradually separates you from my influence. Nicolae touched the pendant at her throat. This will record everything. I will be nearby with witnesses. When she makes her offer, when she reveals the collective's true intentions, we will have everything we need. Hannah nodded, but anxiety curled in her stomach. What if something goes wrong? Nicolae cupped her face in both hands, his touch cool and grounding. I will not let anything happen to you. You have my word, Hannah. You have become too important to me. She leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his certainty. Okay, let's finish this. The next afternoon, Hannah arrived at the Blue Pearl 15 minutes early, as planned. Nicolae was already in position somewhere nearby, watching. She ordered a tea she did not want and waited. Christiana arrived exactly on time, elegant in cream slacks and a silk blouse. She embraced Hannah like an old friend and settled across the small table. I'm so glad you came, Christiana said. I was worried Nicolae might have convinced you to stay away. He doesn't know I'm here, Hannah said, which was technically true in the sense that any observers would not know Nicolae was listening. I didn't tell him. Approval flickered in Christiana's pale eyes. Good, that's good. You're thinking for yourself. She ordered coffee, then turned her full attention to Hannah. So, tell me honestly, how are you really doing? Are you happy? Hannah let uncertainty show. I don't know. Nicolae has been kind and I'm safe. But everything happened so fast. My whole life fell apart, and suddenly I'm living in a vampire's penthouse and learning about this entire hidden world, and I don't know what I'm doing. Of course you don't. How could you? Christiana reached across the table and covered Hannah's hand with her own. You were thrust into a situation you never asked for. And Nicolae took advantage of your vulnerability. I'm sure he frames it as protection, but really, he's using you just as much as Trevor did. What do you mean? Christiana lowered her voice conspiratorially. Nicolae has been trying to undermine the Sanguine Collective for months. We run a legitimate business helping humans navigate financial difficulties, and he despises us for it. When Trevor came to us for help, Nicolae saw an opportunity. He used your wedding as theater, claimed you publicly, all to make a point about his power. You're not a person to him, Hannah. You're a political statement. The lies were delivered with such conviction that Hannah could see how effective they would be on someone who did not know the truth. She forced tears to well in her eyes. I thought he cared about me. Maybe he does, in his way. But Nicolae Octavian cares about power first, always. Christiana squeezed her hand. The collective can help you, truly help you. We can protect you from Nicolae, get you set up somewhere safe, make sure you have the resources to rebuild your life on your terms. No manipulation, no debt, just genuine support. Why would you do that? Hannah asked, exactly as Nicolae had coached her. Because what happened to you was wrong, Christiana said. Trevor never should have involved you in his debts, and Nicolae never should have swooped in and claimed you like property. You deserve better. And the collective believes in helping people who have been victimized by vampire politics. Hannah wiped at her eyes. What would I have to do? Just let us help. Come stay at one of our safe houses while we make arrangements. We'll handle everything. Christiana's smile was warm and false. And eventually, once you're settled, we might ask you to share what you learned about Nicolae while you were staying with him. His routines, his vulnerabilities, who he trusts. Just information, nothing dangerous. It would help us protect other humans from his manipulations. There it was. The real trap, laid out with such gentleness it would barely register as a threat to someone who did not know what to look for. Hannah pretended to consider. I don't want to betray him. Even if he was using me, he did help me. You wouldn't be betraying him, Christiana soothed. You would be protecting yourself and others. That's not betrayal, Hannah. That's survival. Hannah nodded slowly. Can I think about it? Of course. But don't take too long. Every day you stay with Nicolae, his influence over you grows stronger. It becomes harder to leave. Christiana released her hand and withdrew a different card, this one with an address. This is our main office. Come by tomorrow evening if you decide you want our help. We'll be ready to move you immediately. Thank you, Hannah whispered. Christiana paid for their drinks, embraced Hannah once more, and left. Hannah sat alone for another 10 minutes, maintaining her composure, then walked out of the cafe. Nicolae appeared from a side street, his expression grim with satisfaction. Perfect. I had 3 council witnesses listening. Her words are recorded, her intentions clear. The collective attempted to recruit you as a spy and promised to protect you from the consequences, which is a direct violation of the accords regarding human manipulation. So we have them, Hannah said. Yes. Nicolae guided her toward his car. The council will convene tonight. I will present the evidence, they will issue judgment, and by tomorrow the collective will be dismantled and exiled. Hannah climbed into the car, the weight of the past week settling over her. It's really over. Almost, Nicolae said. There is still the matter of what comes next. That evening, Nicolae attended the council meeting while Hannah waited in his penthouse. He returned near midnight, looking tired but triumphant. It is done, he announced. The collective has been found in violation of multiple accords. Christiana and her associates are being exiled to the northern wastes under strict supervision. Their assets are being distributed to their human victims as restitution. Trevor's debt is void. You are free. Hannah stood from the couch where she had been pretending to read. Just like that? Just like that? Nicolae moved to the bar and poured whiskey for them both. Your testimony was compelling, the recordings damning. The council had no choice but to act decisively. What happens to Trevor? He provided his testimony as promised. I have arranged for him to relocate to the West Coast with enough money to start fresh, on the condition that he never returns to this territory. He agreed. Hannah accepted her whiskey and walked to the windows, looking out at the city. Everything she had planned for her future with Trevor was gone. Her job, her apartment, her carefully constructed life. And yet, standing here in a vampire king's penthouse, she felt lighter than she had in years. So, I'm free, she said quietly. Free to go anywhere, do anything. Nicolae moved to stand beside her. Where will you go? Hannah turned to face him. That depends. Is your offer still open? The one about spending time together when the danger was past? Something in Nicolae's expression shifted, vulnerability and hope mixing in equal measure. Yes, very much yes. Then I would like to stay, Hannah said. Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I choose you. I choose this impossible, complicated thing between us, if you'll have me. Nicolae set down his glass and took her hands in his. Hannah Shaw, I have lived for 2 centuries. I have seen empires rise and fall, watched the world transform in ways my human self could never have imagined. And in all that time, I have never met anyone like you. Your strength, your courage, your absolute refusal to let circumstances define you. You are extraordinary. I'm really not, Hannah protested, but Nicolae shook his head. You are to me. And I would be honored to explore whatever this is between us for as long as you will have me. Hannah rose on her toes and kissed him. His lips were cool against hers, his hands gentle as they slid around her waist. The kiss was soft, questioning, an offering rather than a demand. When they broke apart, Hannah rested her forehead against his. I don't know how this works. The immortal vampire, the human woman. How do we build something real when our timelines are so different? We take it one day at a time, Nicolae said. We communicate, we adapt, and we accept that love, in any form, requires risk. I am willing to risk the pain of eventually losing you if it means having you now, The question is whether you are willing to risk loving someone who will outlive you. Hannah thought about it seriously. Thought about aging while Nicolae remained frozen in immortality. Thought about the decades she might have with him versus the centuries he would live without her. And then she thought about walking away, about never exploring this connection, about choosing safety over possibility. "Yes," she said, "I'm willing to risk it." Nicolae's smile was brilliant. "Then we begin." They talked through the night, learning each other. Hannah told him about her childhood, her dreams of becoming an artist that she had set aside for more practical paths, her complicated relationship with her parents. Nicolae shared stories from his long life, the moments of beauty and horror, the people he had loved and lost, the weight of responsibility he carried as king. "You could be turned," he said as dawn approached. "It is an option if you wished it. I would never force it, never even suggest it unless you brought it up, but it is possible." Hannah considered. "Would I still be me? After?" "Yes. The transformation enhances what you are, but it does not erase your essential self. You would be stronger, faster, immortal, but you would still be Hannah Shaw." "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe someday, but not now. I want to experience this life fully first, before I make a decision that permanent." "That is wisdom," Nicolae said. "And I will support whatever you choose, whenever you choose it." As the sky lightened, Nicolae moved away from the windows and into the shadows of the interior. Hannah watched him, fascinated by the way he navigated around the approaching sunlight. "You should sleep," she said. "So should you. It has been a long few weeks." They moved to his bedroom and Nicolae hesitated at the doorway. "I do not presume. I would like to stay with you," Hannah said. "Just to sleep. I want to wake up next to you." He nodded and they climbed into his bed together. Nicolae pulled the blackout curtains closed, plunging the room into darkness, and Hannah curled against his side. His body was cool, his heart beat slow, but his arms around her felt safe. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness, "for coming to the cathedral that day, for giving me a choice when I had none." "Thank you for being brave enough to take it," Nicolae murmured against her hair. "Sleep now. We have time." Hannah slept. She woke in the early evening to find Nicolae already up, standing by the window watching the sunset. She watched him for a long moment, admiring the elegant lines of his profile, the way the dying light caught in his white hair. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. He turned, and his smile was soft. "The future. What we will build together." Over the following months, they built it carefully. Hannah started her freelance design business. Working with the vampire clients, Nicolae introduced her and gradually expanding her portfolio. She rented her own apartment, insisting on maintaining some independence even as she spent most nights at Nicolae's penthouse. Her parents struggled to understand the changes in her life, but eventually accepted that their daughter had found her own path. She attended vampire social events on Nicolae's arm, learned the intricate politics of his world, and became known as someone not to underestimate. And slowly, carefully, they fell deeper in love. Nicolae courted her with old-world patience, bringing her flowers from night-blooming gardens and rare books he thought she would enjoy. He taught her vampire history and introduced her to the immortals who had become his friends across the centuries. He was protective but never possessive, supportive but never controlling. Hannah challenged him, pushed back when he became too autocratic, reminded him that power required wisdom as much as strength. She brought spontaneity into his ancient existence, convinced him to try new things, dragged him to human concerts and art shows and street festivals he would never have attended on his own. They traveled together, Nicolae showing her the places that had shaped him across the centuries. The Carpathian Mountains where he was born, the cities he had called home, the battlefields and ballrooms and quiet corners where history had unfolded. "I never thought I could have this," Nicolae admitted one night as they stood on a balcony in Vienna watching the city lights. "This kind of peace, this kind of partnership." "Neither did I," Hannah said, leaning against him. "I thought love was supposed to look like Trevor, safe and predictable and comfortable. I didn't know it could feel like this, like coming home and jumping off a cliff at the same time." He laughed, and the sound was pure joy. That is an excellent description. A year after the wedding that never was, Hannah stood in the same cathedral, but this time the altar was not empty. Nicolae waited for her there, devastating in dark formal wear, his white hair loose around his shoulders. The guest list was smaller this time, a careful mix of humans and vampires who understood what this union represented. Hannah's dress was deep blue this time, the color of midnight, and she carried dark roses that Nicolae had grown specifically for her. Her father walked her down the aisle, and though he did not fully understand his daughter's choice, he respected it. The ceremony was a blend of human and vampire traditions. They exchanged vows before witnesses, promising partnership and devotion for as long as Hannah's mortal life lasted. Nicolae slipped a ring onto her finger, white gold set with a black diamond, and Hannah gave him a matching band. "I claim you," Nicolae said, the traditional vampire words heavy with meaning. "Not as property, not as possession, but as my equal, my partner, my choice. In this and all things, you are mine as I am yours." "I claim you," Hannah repeated, meeting his dark eyes. "Not because I have no choice, but because I choose you freely. In this and all things, you are mine as I am yours." They sealed it with a kiss, and the cathedral erupted in applause. Human and vampire alike witnessed the impossible union, and for that moment, the two worlds felt a little less separate. The reception was held in Nicolae's building, the entire ground floor transformed into a celebration space. They danced under lights that mimicked stars, ate food prepared by the finest chefs, and toasted with champagne and blood wine in equal measure. Hannah's mother cornered her at one point, tears in her eyes. "Are you happy, sweetheart? Truly?" Hannah looked across the room to where Nicolae stood talking with her father, and her heart swelled. "Yes, Mom, I really, really am." Later, much later, when the guests had departed and the city slept around them, Hannah and Nicolae stood on the penthouse balcony watching the stars. "What happens now?" Hannah asked. Nicolae pulled her closer. "Now we live. We build our life together, one day at a time. We navigate the complications and celebrate the joys. We fight when we disagree and make up when we remember what matters. We do all the ordinary, extraordinary things that people who love each other do. And when I grow old? Then I will love you old," Nicolae said simply. "Every gray hair, every wrinkle, every moment of your precious, finite life. And when your time comes, I will make sure you have lived so fully that you have no regrets. Will you be okay? After?" He was quiet for a long moment. "No. Losing you will break something in me. But that is the price of loving mortals, and you are worth every moment of future pain. Love is always worth the risk, Hannah. You taught me that." She turned in his arms and kissed him, pouring everything she felt into the connection between them. When they broke apart, Nicolae rested his forehead against hers. "I have a question to ask you," Hannah said quietly. "And I want you to answer honestly, with no pressure. Anything. Do you want children?" Nicolae pulled back slightly, surprise evident on his face. I have never considered it possible. Vampires can reproduce, but it is rare, and it requires both partners to be vampires. I know. But if I were turned eventually, would you want that? A family? He studied her carefully. "Is that something you want?" "Maybe," Hannah admitted. "Not now, not for a while. I want time with just us first. But I think about it sometimes, about what it would be like to build a family with you, to create something that is ours." Nicolae's expression softened into something approaching wonder. "Yes, if you chose to be turned. If we built that future together, I would very much like to have a family with you. To see you as a mother, to raise children who carry the best of both of us. That would be extraordinary." Hannah smiled. "Then we have something else to look forward to. But first, we live this life. We make the most of every day." "Agreed," Nicolae said, and kissed her again under the stars. 5 years passed in a rush of joy and challenge and growth. Hannah's design business flourished, and she became one of the most sought-after artists in the city. Nicolae continued his work as king, but he made time for his wife, prioritizing their relationship above political maneuvering. They fought occasionally, fierce arguments about independence and protection and the balance of power in their relationship. But they always came back together, always talked it through, always chose each other. As Hannah approached her 31st birthday, she started thinking more seriously about the choice Nicolae had offered years before: immortality, transformation, a future that stretched beyond a single mortal lifetime. They discussed it at length, weighing the benefits and costs. Hannah spoke to other turned vampires, learned about their experiences, asked the hard questions. Nicolae never pushed, never suggested which choice he preferred, but she could see the hope in his eyes when she brought it up. "I want to do it," Hannah said finally. "Not because I'm afraid of aging, not because I feel pressured, but because I'm not done yet. There is so much more I want to experience, so much more life I want to live. And I want to live it with you, not just for decades, but for centuries." Nicolae cupped her face in his hands. "You are certain? Once done, it cannot be undone." "I'm certain. I choose this. I choose forever with you." They prepared carefully. Nicolae explained the process, the 3 days of transformation, the pain and disorientation, and eventual rebirth. He arranged for privacy, for safety, for everything Hannah would need. On a quiet evening, in late autumn, Hannah lay down in Nicolae's bed, and he knelt beside her. "I will be with you every moment," he promised. "I will not leave your side." "I know," Hannah said, and offered him her throat. The bite was sharp, then euphoric. Hannah felt her blood flowing out, her heartbeat slowing, her human life draining away. And then Nicolae cut his own wrist and brought it to her lips. "Drink," he commanded. "Become." She drank, and the vampire blood burned through her veins like liquid fire. The transformation began, her body dying and remaking itself simultaneously. Pain crashed over her in waves, and she screamed into the darkness. But Nicolae held her through it all, his voice a steady anchor. "I have you. You are not alone. I have you." 3 days later, Hannah Shaw opened her eyes and saw the world with new clarity. Every color sharper, every scent distinct, every sound precise. She sat up, and her body moved with fluid grace she had never possessed as a human. Nicolae watched her from across the room, giving her space to orient herself. "How do you feel?" Hannah tested her new strength, flexing fingers that could crush stone, listened to the city below with hearing that caught individual conversations blocks away, felt the hunger rising in her throat, sharp and demanding. "Powerful," she said, and her voice came out rich and resonant. "Different, but still me. I'm still me, Nick." Relief flooded his features. "Yes, you are still my Hannah, just more." She crossed the room in a blur of speed and threw herself into his arms. He caught her easily, spinning her around, laughing with pure joy. "Welcome to forever," he said against her hair. They spent weeks adjusting to Hannah's transformation. Nicolae taught her to hunt ethically, to control her strength, to navigate the vampire world as one of them rather than a human under protection. She struggled initially, but her stubborn determination carried her through the difficult moments. The vampire community accepted her quickly. She had proven herself across the years of her human life, and her transformation only solidified her position. Within months, Hannah stood beside Nicolae, not as his human wife, but as his vampire queen, equal partner in ruling the Eastern Territories. 2 years after her transformation, Hannah decided she was ready to try for the family they had discussed. Nicolae was cautious. Vampire pregnancy is difficult, dangerous, and there is no guarantee it will happen at all. "I know," Hannah said, "but I want to try. Don't you?" The hope in his eyes was answer enough. It took time, but eventually Hannah's vampire physiology adapted, and she felt the first stirrings of life within her. The pregnancy was unlike anything human, her body changing rapidly to accommodate the developing child. Nicolae was devoted and attentive and absolutely terrified. He hovered, bringing her blood wine and rare delicacies, monitoring her health obsessively. Hannah found it endearing and exasperating in equal measure. "I am not made of glass," she reminded him for the 100th time. "You are carrying our child," he countered. "I am allowed to be protective." 9 months later, Hannah gave birth to a daughter with Nicolae's white hair and Hannah's human eye color, deep brown that looked startling against her pale vampire skin. They named her Lucia, and she was perfect. Holding their daughter for the first time, Nicolae wept tears of blood. "She is ours," he said in wonder. "We made this. We created something beautiful." Hannah kissed him, her own tears falling. "We did. We really did." Lucia grew quickly, the way vampire children did, aging to adolescence in a handful of years. She was brilliant and stubborn and absolutely fearless, with her father's strategic mind and her mother's artistic talent. When Lucia was 5 years old, Hannah became pregnant again, this time with a son they named Farin. He had Hannah's facial features and Nicolae's aristocratic bearing, and from the moment he could walk, he followed his father everywhere. Their family was complete, strange and impossible and absolutely real. Decades passed, then centuries. Hannah and Nicolae ruled the eastern territories with wisdom and strength, their partnership legendary among vampire kind. Their children grew and eventually took positions within the court, continuing their parents' legacy. Hannah never stopped creating art, never stopped pushing boundaries, never stopped being exactly who she had always been. She and Nicolae fought and loved and built a life that spanned the ages. On the 200th anniversary of the day Nicolae had walked into that cathedral and offered her his hand, they stood together in the penthouse where so much of their story had unfolded. "Do you ever regret it?" Nicolae asked. "Choosing this life? Choosing me?" Hannah looked at their children, now grown and powerful in their own right, looked at the city they protected together, looked at the man who had seen her at her lowest moment and offered her strength instead of pity. "Not once," she said firmly. "You gave me choice when I had none. You saw me when I felt invisible. You loved me when I did not know how to love myself. How could I possibly regret choosing forever with you?" Nicolae pulled her close and kissed her with all the passion of 2 centuries together. "I love you, Hannah Shaw Octavian, my queen, my partner, my choice." "And I love you," Hannah said, "my king, my home, my always." Outside the windows, the city glittered with life and possibility. Inside, 2 vampires who had found each other in the ruins of what should have been stood together, proof that sometimes the best love stories begin in the most unexpected moments. And they lived, truly lived, forever.